Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Young Fan Podcast. Welcome to another episode of The Interview. We're joined by the legend from 4-0 written all over it. We're joined by Tom. How you doing, Tom?
For the second time, it's complete full disclosure, my fault. I messed up some of the first bit of the footage, so you'll notice the cut probably, but if you don't, then movie magic. I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me back again, and I'm looking forward to telling you more about our season.
Yeah, it's going to be a really, really interesting one because I want to talk about Portsmouth. Of course, we're going to talk about Portsmouth. It's why Tom is here. But I just wanted to really sort of delve deep into what has been, from an outside perspective, a really sort of strange season for Portsmouth. Went into the season, I've just done my predictions reaction. I expected Portsmouth to be around the top six, if not in that top six, with obviously Danny Cowley coming in. I want to discuss a little bit about Danny Cowley, his sort of future, and what I think what's gone right or maybe what's gone wrong. I want to talk about the inconsistencies through the season as well, because I think that's probably been a bit of a downfall for Portsmouth this season. But first of all, I think the best way to start this sort of discussion when talking about Pompey this year, and I'll ask this question to Tom. I think I did it with an Oxford United fan a few weeks ago, and we're talking about our season. But if you could sum up Portsmouth's season in one word, how would you describe it? I put you on the spot a little bit, but what do you reckon?
I would probably say disappointing is my overriding feeling. But yeah, I mean, disappointment is the key one, because and streaky as well is another word that probably comes to mind. In terms of kind of our run of form, we've had two really good moments where we've looked unbeatable, and we have been unbeatable this season. Or last season, or are we referring to it as this season or last season?
I guess it's slash both, isn't it? But technically it is this season, yeah.
We'll call it this season for the purposes of the video. Not, obviously nowhere near where Pompey want to be, nowhere near where we should be, and nowhere near where we perhaps might have been had things gone slightly differently. The streaky nature of it is that we had these two periods, and it was kind of the tail end of October into November, kind of Christmassy time. We had a really good 6 weeks period where we were picking up results left, right and centre, off the back of a really disappointing night against Ipswich where we lost 4-0 back in sort of mid-October. I think it was start or mid-October. And that was a harrowing night. That was a real kind of look inside yourself and wonder, what are you actually doing at this point in time? I think that went for both players and the manager and the supporters. It was a Tuesday night. It started to pour down with rain after the game as well, and yeah, it just wasn't a good night at all.
Sounds like a horrific night.
It was, yeah. Even the rain got involved. It wasn't much fun. And losing 4-0 at home's bad, but when it's Ipswich as well, we're just like, oh God, really? So yeah, no, that was that, and then that happened, and the response to it was good. Character, drive, a passion to get ourselves back on track, which emphasises and characterises Danny Cowley in a nutshell as a manager, which I'm sure we'll go on to chat about. But yeah, and that was good. And then we came to the turn of the year, and we had a real struggle for form. We really we had a stumble over the New Year period where we had a 0-0 draw against Cambridge, which was horrendous. And yeah, that wasn't quite as bad as the 4-0 loss, but yeah, it was really kind of, I don't know, it's one of those where if that one had been a win, and then there's a couple more that you're looking at thinking, if our away performances had just been up to scratch as our home form was, then we could be talking about a completely different season. So that trip up to Cambridge was a pain and a nightmare, and yeah, I mean, you say, you take a point from it, but you want to be winning those sort of games on the road. 3 points is so much better than one, especially at what a key moment in time, that kind of Christmassy period where you've got a lot of games in a very short space of time, and that new year is almost kind of the turning point. It's the halfway point, isn't it, in everyone's season? We know that. Then January transfer window comes, we get some signings in, we make those signings, and they have an almost an immediate impact, really. We go into the last game of January for Pompey against Charlton Athletic. And although it's a 2-0 loss, from that point onwards, I don't believe we lost more than 3 games at Fratton Park between then and the end of the season. We made it the Fortress Fratton that we had done in the Premier League days, and it's been a long time since we've been able to call it Fortress Fratton. with conclusive evidence that it has been, and it was excellent. And we beat the likes of Wigan Athletic at home, we beat Rotherham at home, and we had a really good sort of run in towards the end of the season. A great night against you boys as well on the Tuesday night, which we are make sure we mention in this. Although that was an incredibly tight one. Similar sort of story against Lincoln as well. We beat them 3-2 at Fratton Park, and it just became somewhere that was really difficult for teams to get anything out of. And I think that's really what we need to try and do heading into next season. And that's of real importance, is maintain that ability to turn teams over at home, or that ability to go the extra mile and go on better than a team like we did against Oxford and Lincoln. You could argue from an Oxford point of view that maybe you guys deserve to win that game just as much or if not more than we did. But at the end of the day, we managed to get the 3 points on that one. It was the same against Lincoln. But then you've got your landslides against the likes of Wigan and Rotherham, where you've absolutely turned a team over. And you just think, if that had been the same away from home this season, we could have been talking about a completely different outcome.
Yeah, I think it's similar really to Oxford. I think, we finished a little bit higher up. We obviously finished 8th in the league in the end. But I think it's one of those where you do, and it's hindsight's a wonderful thing. You look back on these sort of key moments within the game. You look back at key moments within specific matches across the season. You go, if we'd have just gone there and maybe got that you just taken that chance and even got a point, or just taken 3 points from that, they all add up. And we now look at Portsmouth, 10th in the league, 10 points off the playoffs. I had a little look at the stats of Pompey's season, and it was really, really interesting. So looking at the XG and looking at the goals for first, 10th in the league for goals for on XG, that's 45.4. 11th in the league for open play goals scored at 47. 13th in the league for total open play shots at 407. So you look at the stats there, 10th, 11th, 13th, all around really, when you look at the full league table, where sort of Portsmouth do finish at around 10, 11th and 13th. I thought, does that match up for goals against? And it does. 11th for open play XG against, 9th for open play goals against, 10th for shots against. Interestingly, your set piece record is decent, third best for defending set pieces at 11. Around,
that's something to be proud of.
Exactly, you can take something away from the season, if anything. But really, really interestingly, you speak there. I think it was when we did it the first time. We spoke about it the first time. You said, looking at the stats of Portsmouth and looking at the individual stats, it is actually a really good representation of how Portsmouth's season actually did go. Because sometimes stats can be really misleading. I've just put out my sort of team of the season episode, and a lot of people in the comments are a little bit unhappy with some of my selections, and I have to put my hands up and say, well, a lot of that is because I've looked at that player and he's done fairly well this year, but other players maybe that just on the eye have done better. But because I don't watch them every single week, it's impossible to really get a good grip of it. But with Portsmouth, you said there, the stats actually are quite fair when you look at their season. So I want to ask you something a little bit about the start of the season and the expectation going into it. I know it's a little bit irrelevant now the season is over, but do you believe that the expectation at the start of the season, do you feel that Portsmouth have fallen short, or do you feel that there was a part of you that maybe expected this sort of campaign, or how do you feel now when reflecting on the start of the season?
We've massively fallen short, which is obviously, and I said it at the start of the podcast, that it's it's a really, really disappointing one from our point of view, because obviously you look at it and you've just mentioned the stats there, and it symbolises an average season, and it's probably, I was talking about, and I know I probably should have mentioned it like I did the first time we were talking, but the streakiness does emulate some form of being average. Yeah. If you're good sometimes and you're rubbish other times, and you go on a run of form that's excellent, and then you go on another run where you don't pick up a win. I think we went winless in 15 at one point this season, right? So that will put, if you're brilliant sometimes and rubbish other times, that will put you slap bang in the middle, which is nullifying
each other one out, aren't you? You're almost
exactly you cancel yourself out. Yeah, so it's I think going into this season, we were all aware that it was a transition season, and Danny was at pains to say that at the start of the year, and it was a new group back in August 2021, when obviously he'd had sort of 6 or 7 games, Danny and Nicky, at the tail end of last season, once we sacked Kenny Jackett, which is one of the best decisions that this club has made in a very long time, might I add. And that was good, and that brought a bit more character and life. Well, it brought a load of character and life back to the football club, and actually back to the city of Portsmouth, to extend it to a wider point of view, in it because it is a city that is so deeply rooted and connected with its football club, and the supporters feel it. And if you lose on a Saturday, it then kicks on into the Monday, and there's a general negativity around the city. It's strange, but go to places like Sunderland and whatever, they'll tell you exactly the same thing. So it's a strange one, but going back to what you said, the expectation was that we would at least challenge, or that's how I felt at the time anyway, is that we would be in and around there and competing and sort of getting those results that other fans of League One football teams sit up and go, oh crikey, yeah, Pompey are doing really well. That's what you kind of want, and I hope that that's what we see next season. In reality, we had to sort of sit back and accept the fact that there were going to be transitions going on, players moving on, players coming in, a team needing to gel and build, and particularly in a league like League One, Jack, and you'll know this just as well as I do, that it does take a lot, but there's a lot of football clubs at this level that are well established and have been for a long period of time. I'm thinking Carl Robinson at your place, I'm thinking Gareth Ainsworth at Wickham. You know, there's so many groups of players and groups of managements that have been stuck around for a long period of time. And when you're a new set of players, and a set of players, but when you're a changing group of players and a new management, it does take a little bit of time for the ideals, for the ideology to bed in and start, especially, and this is obviously this is a criticism of Kenny Jackett because it is, but especially when the previous administration's ideas are so outdated and so boring and historic. When you get this manager come in who's had success at Lincoln, he's taken them up from the National League to League One, when he's put on a show in the Championship with Huddersfield, when he's developed his craft and he knows what he's doing and he knows what he wants, and he has this aura about him that just brings everyone up with him, and he has the ability to motivate players to do their very best and deliver on the football pitch. When you contrast that with something that is almost the antonym of what Danny's been doing, it does take a little bit of time to get going, and I think that's what we saw this season. But it wouldn't suggest that you would have a streaky season where sometimes you're good and sometimes you're bad. You're probably sat there thinking, well, why is he not consistently delivering on what he says he's going to do? I'm sure. Do you want to talk about that now, or should we come on to that later?
Yeah, I mean, we
can
talk about. I mean, you're going to talk about. I presume that the problems with Danny Cowley in terms of why they haven't really necessarily matched up. If we could just quickly talk, I mean, we will definitely come on to that because I think that's a really, really interesting talking point. I remember asking it when we first recorded this sort of opening section. It was really bizarre looking at it from an external point of view when you've got somebody like yourself who's followed Portsmouth for a long, long time, created some amazing content on Portsmouth, clearly someone at Portsmouth through and through, and very well spoken about Danny Cowley. And then you look at the season and you go, why is that not matched up? Why is it that you've got someone with really refreshing ideas, someone that's, instead of Kenny Jackett, who, like you said there, very outdated, not your modern manager, if you like. And then you're looking at a group of players as well that are no doubt talented. I mean, you said it yourself. This is not a non-talented group of players. These players are good players as well. Again, you've got to ask questions of the board, of course. It's not just the manager and the players. There's, of course, people above that. But why has that not matched? So, I mean, Danny Cowley joined in March 2021. A little bit of interesting stuff on Danny Cowley in terms of his points per game at Portsmouth. It's not bad, really. 1.55. That isn't horrific, to be honest. When you look at the other managers in the league, and we know how difficult it is to get points in League One, especially with Danny Cowley. And at the same time as well, you've got to remember he joined in March 2021, so he only had the tail end of last year, like you said, and the entirety of this year. 86 points for sixth place this season. So again, that just shows the competitivity of League One. So we know the challenges. And like you said there, because it is so competitive in League One, you've got to really be at your top level. To think that 83 odd points doesn't get you into the top six, I mean, that's absolutely mind-blowing. We were sat there as an Oxford United fan base as well going, at the start of the season, I think everyone was sort of thinking it, but certainly as an Oxford United fan, surely if we get 80 points, that should be enough. I think it was last season. I think 83 points got you third in the league, and that was Blackpool, who got promoted through the playoffs, and that doesn't even get into sixth place anymore. That just shows how difficult this league is, and it's only going to get more difficult. I mean, a little bit lucky maybe that Sunderland have got out of the league and Wigan was robbed them as well, but you've then got the likes of Derby, you've got Peterborough, you've got Barnsley, and you've got as well Ipswich, Charlton, Portsmouth, ourselves as well, Sheffield Wednesday. It goes on and on. You've got so many teams also trying to get in the top six. It doesn't get any harder. We will come on to what you said there, Tom, about maybe why that hasn't matched up. And I asked you to sort of highlight some key problems within that. You spoke about it's so bizarre. So the second point was talking about the striker situation. But the first one before that, I'm really interested to see what you've got to say about that.
I think there's probably two things to say on that, to be honest with you, Jack. And the first one would be ownership and the way in which the football club's been run this season. This is not going to be me coming on to here and being massively critical of the ownership, because I think it is a club that has a very good relationship with its supporters. And as we spoke about before, Pompey have been through some really troubling times in terms of ownership in the last, the recent history of Pompey is dominated by underhand, sort of no one really knows who they are, owners that have actually done a lot in order to bring about the kind of the financial fair play aspect of the way the Premier League is now. And that was mainly not just us, but we were involved in the kind of the checks and balances that are put on Premier League ownership and ownership in this country. Unfortunately, it's still happening. We know the Derby situation and Bury in the last couple of years as well, and it's been happening to clubs, left, right, and centre all over the pyramid in terms of bad ownership. So it would be wrong for me to come on and completely slate our owners, because at the end of the day, they are owners that are actively putting in money into the football club for the benefit not just of themselves but for the team and for the prosperity of the fans and for the manager and for everyone associated with the team. So that's a little disclaimer before I go on to say that the backing in terms of financially off the pitch, cynics would say Fratton Park's falling apart. Have you been there before?
I have, yeah. I was there when we scored a last minute header. Matty Taylor, it was the last year that fans were allowed back in. So it was Matty Taylor. It was 1-1 final score. That was the last time there. You might remember it.
Right. So you didn't come for the Tuesday one?
No, I didn't. No, not this season. No. I watched it from home though, and that was enough.
Yeah, Fratton Park's fallen apart in places. The Fratton end is as lovely as it is. The Fratton end's all right actually. It's the Milton end where you guys are for away fans is being redone in the next couple of weeks and months. But what is mainly is the issue is the south stand and the north stand have needed to be they don't match safety regulations, and therefore over the closed season this year they've been ripping out the seats and putting in new ones, sorting out sight lines, and the south stand, I don't know if you remember it, the stand to your left in the away section is 2 tiers, and that's going down to 1, so it's going to be straight down from the back right down to the pitch. That's all being changed. I think the rough figure is about £11 million in terms of restorations and sorting it out and redevelopment. So that's been put in as a rough figure. I mean, we don't want to get into economics because you haven't done it very level and neither have I. But the capital investment is quite a lot of that. But anyway, that doesn't matter too much. £11 million. Give or take, quite a lot of it remains in the football club, and how much of it has actually been invested directly from the owners is to be questioned and to be debated about. But anyway, that's the figure that it's cost, and it is continuing to cost, and it looks great, and they've got new seats, and what else is good is that there's a new it's a bit more disability friendly, so you've got more disabled seats and more room for carers and stuff, and that's right down by the pitch, and they're going to be the ability for disabled people to be in as an away fan, come to Fratton Park and sit with the away fans, whereas you used to have to sit in the Fratton end. So that's a good point, and there's loads of other great things that brings in terms of new food and new drink facilities and all that kind of thing. The flip side of that is that hasn't been matched on the pitch. So we have the only real example I have of Michael Eisner and the family and the board of directors at the football club, which is his son Eric Breck and then Mark Catlin, who's the former CEO. He's now on the board, and they haven't put the money in to invest in the players. And the only real example that I can give you of a time where the hands have been put in the proverbial pockets of the owners is when Joe Morrell was it wasn't nabbed from Ipswich, but Ipswich were making the move for him. Danny said, no, actually, we really need Morrell. I had him at Lincoln and he was an absolute diamond. We need him here at Fratton Park. And the owners said, right, okay, no problem, stick our hands in our pockets, and we came up with this deal that Joe Morrell couldn't refuse, and Ipswich couldn't get anywhere near him, and he was on his way down to Fratton Park, and we announced him at 11 o'clock on whatever day it was. So that was great, and that's the only real example of the owners really splashing the cash and thinking, right, we need to go and get this player. Denver Hume, I think we forked out for about 400 to 500 grand for in the January transfer window, which is another sort of semi-example of a talent from Sunderland who we bought down. Other than that, the majority of what the owners have been doing since Danny Cowley took over are loan signings and sort of contracts that are kind of not the greatest in the world and wouldn't rival other League One clubs at this level. What fans are really keen on is, we know that Michael Eisner's got a lot of cash. He's the ex-Disney chairman, and he oversaw The Lion King, Jack. Like, I'm not being funny, it's one of the best films of all time. So he's not going to be strapped for cash. So you're sort of sat there thinking, if he could match what they are doing as an ownership from what's been put into the stadium and the redevelopment project there. We also own our own training ground now as well, which is important to note. So there was the purchase of that as freehold property. If they could match those things with what's going on the pitch in terms of club personnel, we know we're not short of talents. We've already mentioned that on your podcast, but a little bit of additions, couple more diamonds like your Joe Morels that we've got involved would be really beneficial to us, especially, as we've already said, heading into what is going to be a really competitive League One season next year. I'm a bit worried, Jack, that it's going to be even more competitive than it was this year, because although you've got Wigan and Rotherham going up, Derby are obviously in troubled times, but they're not going to be wanting to spend too much time down in the depths of League One. Ipswich, I would imagine, will make a real charge for it. Sunderland have left us, but then that paves the way for clubs like yourselves and for the Charltons, who we don't know what sort of state they're going to be in come the end of the transfer window. Obviously, we will want to be up there in and around it as well. And there's clubs like Plymouth Argyle that have missed out on it and will be driven to get up there and get in amongst it next season as well. So it's going to be just as, if not as congested next year. For that reason, I'd like to see us bring in some real talents over the summer, which we've been linked to so far, but nothing material yet. Quick plug, there's a video coming out, Keep, Sell and Avoid, on the Fauna Written All Over It channel later on, where there are a few that we are get rid of, and there are a few where we are like, we need to sign them right now, and they need to have a contract extension, and we need to move heaven and earth in order to make sure that happens. The second point that I would say, aside from ownership and players on the pitch, would be for the reason why the kind of the Danny Cowley relationship with the way in which he plays and the points that he gathers hasn't quite worked, is because of doesn't solely rest with one man, but there are a number of game-changing moments that would have meant that we would have won games rather than lost or drawn them, and that man is John Marquis, who's now playing his football at Lincoln City. Obviously, it's probably unjust to single out a player on his own for the material reason why Pompey haven't won more games, but I think it's true. You only need to look at Pompey's 2-2 draw with Charlton at the Valley earlier on this season. There is a goal that, I don't know how good you are at football, Jack, but literally I could have scored it, and I think you probably could have. Bang average, well, there you go. So you would have buried it, mate, and he just planted it wide, and that would have been 3 points heading Pompey's way instead of 1. There's a Plymouth game at home as another example. There's countless before Christmas, when he fell out of favour with Danny, and then eventually obviously moved off in January, where if George Hirst had been on the pitch, and George Hirst is double figures this season just from January in terms of goals, and he's just been so immense, Hirsty, and he's the number one player that I think we need to try and get back if we possibly can this season, going into next season, from Leicester City, because of just his hold-up play and his speed and just the way he can just bury it, which is all those three things of what we lacked in John Marquis. So for that reason, I am saying that had Hirsty displaced Marquis from the start of the season, which he probably well could have done, then we might be talking about a different story. Obviously, that's not me sat here saying that George Hirst would have definitely scored every single goal that Marquis missed. That's also not me saying that George Hirst would have scored all the goals that Marquis did score. So there's obviously that you have to kind of twin it with an asterisk, if you like, and make that clear. But I think we would have given ourselves a much better chance had John Marquis not been on the pitch from August to December, scored a lot more goals, and ultimately won a lot more games, Jack.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important to say. I think, but what I would add to that as well, and what I would like to ask you a little bit further with the ownership, is do you believe, I presume you don't know the CEO and the owners personally, but do you trust them that they will do that? Or is it one of those where you just simply do not know? Because, I mean, they are looking like they are putting money into maybe the infrastructure of the football club. Do you think they will do that? Do they look like sort of the owners that have got the ambition to back Danny Cowley on the pitch? Do you think that's something that could happen? Or are you pretty sure they might take the more relaxed approach to it in the nicest possible way in the transfer market? Do you trust that they've got something? They might go and maybe push the boat out?
I think there's a little bit of they should be a little bit concerned. To answer your question, I do know the owners. I've met Eric personally, and I've spoken to Danny Cowley on the channel before. I think there is a good relationship there, and I think the message has always been to the local press and the media that if Danny wants to play, we'll back him on it. That hasn't been seen in real time. That haven't really been any cases and any evidence that we can definitely say, yeah, no, that happened, apart from obviously the Joe Morrell one. I'm really keen to tell you that yes, the owners will get out there and back him to the hilt. I think would be a little bit of a worry from me from an ownership. If I was in charge of Portsmouth, we said this the other time, didn't we? If I was in charge of Portsmouth Football Club, if I was the director of football, which is someone that they are actively looking to recruit at the moment, then you would be a little bit concerned if you weren't going to spend money on players, because that is what Pompey fans have been calling for 3 transfer windows now under Danny Cowley. Going into our third one, should I say. So at this moment in time, I am sat here and I'm thinking, if they aren't financially going to back Danny Cowley in this window, then we can probably safely say that they aren't going to at any point in the near future. Obviously, they have championship ambitions for the football club, which is obviously, of course, what every Portsmouth Football Club fan, I don't know why I said football club in there, but every Portsmouth fan wants to see and is really keen on. And in the very near future, as soon as we possibly could do that, then I think we'd all be really grateful. And we'd like to see ourselves up there and fighting for it. But it doesn't need me to tell you that you need to put in the capital investment in the football club, in the players specifically, in order to achieve that and make that a reality. So I think they will. I think that the way in which they've been talking about their vision for the football club from an ownership point of view, they've always been very keen on making clear their sustainable methods and the value in being a sustainable having a sustainable model of running a football club, because you don't want to get up there and then have no money and fall back down. That's obviously what happened to us last time, and they're very keen, and I assume they've read the history books and seen that the football club fell on some really terrible times and I remember the morning that we were close to non-existent back in 2013. That was it was crazy. There wasn't going to be a football club. Did the Portsmouth Supporters Trust not step in and the fans own it for a little while, which is a story in itself. So they're keen on not getting back to there, and I think every Pompey fan's keen on that not happening. But at the same time, a bit of material investment is really key if we're going to be successful this season. I think they will, and I'm hoping they will. And if they don't, then I don't want to say a revolt, but they won't be. There'll be a little bit that will kind of turn. Pompey fans aren't stupid. That will sort of turn people away from the idea if they're not already turned away from it as they are. And I know a lot of Pompey fans that are. Everyone I speak to is keen on Danny Cowley. It will be very difficult for you to find someone who does not sing his praises and think that Danny is the man. It's that one step up from Danny that people are a little bit reserved on right now, and hopefully they can prove people wrong this summer, put the money in that we need, and we can have a really successful season next year. We're also after a director of football, which is and everyone seems to be turning that away at the minute.
How do you feel about that? Because I think director of football, they're a little bit like Marmite. I think some people absolutely love them. I think they can be really, really helpful with the recruitment. Some people think that completely maybe takes away that sort of, because ultimately the director of football is somebody, I hope I'm right with this, is almost in the middle between the manager and the owners, and you're sort of sat in the middle, and he is in charge of that recruitment side of things. I think I spoke about it on a podcast I did quite recently, a live one. I think it was the director of football. I think it was also that sort of, because Danny Cowley, this is going to be a stupid question, this is going to sort of really pretty embarrass me. He's the manager, not head coach, isn't he? That is right. Is his title manager?
Correct. He's I don't know. Don't quote me on that, Jack. But
I was going to say, because there's a fine line between that as well. Because
should know that, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely should. I'm pretty sure Carlton's going to obviously is the manager. I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to say that. But I think that's that fine line as well between that manager being the manager and definitely in charge of more looking at the recruitment side, and then head coach as well, looking at the recruitment and of course the day-to-day coaching, but more the coaching if you are. Obviously the title holds being the head coach. So director of football is quite a strange one, really. With recruitment, how does that affect things? You'd like to think it's more of a positive influence in terms of the recruitment process, but it's not always positive. So, I mean, you said there you're a little bit maybe more convinced than other Portsmouth fans. Is that because you trust the director of football is the right thing going forward, or why is that? What do you think about the director of football situation?
To start with, Danny Cowley on the website is listed as our head coach.
Right.
So I don't. I mean, he's always Pompey boss is normally the way that they allude to him in the local media. So I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there is a difference in what.
Yeah, there is a minor. There's a slight difference. But I'm not completely entirely sure what that different entails. To be fair.
There is, and maybe the head coach role is more of a kind of football team operations than it is, that. Anyway, well, you can read into as much as that as you want. But the bottom line is, what I can tell you about that for certain is that the message from the board of directors and the message from Eric Eisner, who's Michael Eisner's son, who's mainly involved in kind of the frontage of running the football club on a day-to-day basis, albeit from afar in the States, is that the director of football job is being negotiated in order to alleviate a bit of pressure away from Danny Cowley's shoulders, in terms of Danny is doing a lot of things at the minute, and I think the direct quote is "get a monkey off Danny's back" is what the ownership structure have been saying, which you can only say is a good thing, because it is. I mean, the less that Danny has to concentrate on recruiting players, and the more he can concentrate on the day-to-day runnings of the football team and kind of the nitty-gritty of getting a successful team together and winning football matches is paramount, isn't it? So the flip side of that is that the role has to be the right person, and it has to be someone that, I know Danny is for a director of football because he's obviously doing a lot and it relieves a bit of workload for him. But just in the last week, you would have seen. I imagine you would have seen the I don't know the names of these people, but the Forest Green Rovers current director of football turned down a deal that we offered to him for a better contract to Forest Green. The exact same happened.
Forest Green having a bit of a nightmare at the moment anyway. Their manager, as he goes,
exactly.
So it's not looking great there at all. So it's a bit of a hard time for Forest Green, I imagine, at the moment.
It is, yeah, and they're probably trying to clutch at as many people as they can. They don't want mass exodus out the door, which is understandable. Cambridge United as well, their director of football turned down a deal. And there's another one as well, which his name's gone. But anyway, 3 current directors of football have turned down a position at Pompey. Now, you look at that from one or two ways. You can either say, well, they want to stay where they are. They might have wife and kids, and they might be settled where they are and sort of enjoying the job, and they've been offered a better position, maybe a little bit more money at the end of the month, which is always great, that kind of thing. Or you can say, why are these people not chomping at the bit to get to Pompey and be the director of football at a club the size of ours, without wanting to blow anyone's trumpet too loudly? So it's one of those where you can look at it from two sides of the coin. I'd like to see the position filled, and they've kept saying it's imminent. Sorry, I don't think the media help. I know we kind of, myself and yourself, play a part for our respective clubs in terms of the media, as it were, with the sort of the YouTube side of it. But the amount of talk that goes on about it in the Portsmouth News and various other, Hampshire Live talk about it quite a lot, and that's not a criticism of them, but maybe if we let the kind of recruitment process for a head of recruitment and a head of football operations and director of football, whatever they want to call it, let that take its course and see where we are once they've made a decision on that, might be a better shout than trying to get involved and so-and-so's declined this deal and we've had to go back on this one, and they don't want to come, we really want him but he's not available, that kind of thing. It's just not beneficial from our point of view, and I don't think it's healthy for the fan base to see that we're having trouble trying to find someone who's meant to find other people is a bit of a worry. But hopefully we get there, and as we say, there's still a long time till the transfer window opens, so if you can get someone in the door in place ready for that to happen, then you go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just quickly sort of round up on Portsmouth, and so the best way of doing that, I feel, is maybe looking ahead, like you said. You can't look too far ahead, but looking at next season. Let's say, we'll throw a few hypotheticals out, which is dangerous, but we'll do it, and we'll sort of see where we end up. Let's say you do keep hold of some of the players you've got on loan, like maybe they either come back out, maybe they come back on loan, or you sign them permanently. Let's say you do bolster the areas. Again, we can't give names. League One and this sort of level of football, it's really difficult to sort of to give names. But let's say you do bolster the squad in the areas you were looking to. What are your feelings ahead of next season? What's your expectations? Say that it goes the way that you would want it to go. Let's say you got the director of football role, and you could definitely, which is I don't know what your CV is looking like.
Dangerous.
You never know. And it does. You come away going, I'm happy with that window. Where do you want to see Portsmouth next season? Is it the top 6 hunt? Is that a minimum, or is that sort of what you feeling? How are you feeling?
I think we spoke about it earlier, didn't we? But with something to play for is important. I'd love to say that Pompey could be fighting for an automatic promotion spot come next season. To some opposition fans, you might go, he's massively Pompey tinted glasses on there, but I think it's kind of the place we want to be. Obviously, we know that it's not going to be as easy as that. You've got to respect, you've got the likes of Derby County coming down next season, haven't you? And you've got big teams that are still, you've still got Ipswich Town, Sheffield Wednesday, Charlton Athletic is still in this division alongside ourselves. There's 4 nailed on championship clubs already, aren't there? And massive respect to Oxford and the job that we used to call him James Corden rather affectionately at Fratton Park, but the job that he continues to do. And you look at some teams that have fallen on hard times this season. You got your Lincoln Cities, who you will remember it, just a few short seasons ago were really fighting for it and were put in. Fleetwood Town were up there, weren't they, in the COVID season? So that just goes back to the unpredictable nature of League One that we've spoken about already. So if I was the director of football, I mean, that would be an amazing job, wouldn't it? But if I would move heaven and earth to get George Hirst back at the football club. I would quite happily, take a hit financially if you need to. If you need to step up the deal. But the problem with the George Hirst one specifically is Leicester City were paying half his wages last year, which means that he either takes a 50% pay cut,
or you pay the full shebang that he's paying already. Yeah.
Or we go, maybe not the full shebang, but if we can match 75, 80, 85% of what he was earning, and he then has a successful season this year and heads on up to the Championship with ourselves, or he goes back to play for another Championship club next season, then so be it. Whether he's going to do that or not is a different story, but we'll have to wait and see. The same goes for Hayden Carter. I know we were paying a portion of his wages at Blackburn. Obviously, Tony Mowbray's not there anymore, so whether he comes back into the fold or he's pushed even further out of it, we don't know yet. Again, a number of articles written about that.
Was it 500,000 they want or something stupid?
Oh, I don't know where on earth that figure's come from, Jack, to be honest with you, and it's really irritated me because you can't. Why on earth? Blackburn press says that Pompey put that figure, and then Pompey then say that Blackburn have come up with that, and then so someone in the middle somewhere has come up with this random £500,000 for.
It's a bizarre one. It's a bizarre figure. I mean, it's bizarre because you're looking at. You'd presume it's Blackburn putting that out. You'd presume, because it'd be strange for Portsmouth unless you've got maybe a bigger budget than we all think. It'd be bizarre for Portsmouth to come out with that sort of statement, unless they're trying to maybe double bluff and try and do something a little bit different. But you'd presume it's Blackburn trying to put a price tag on it, and then forcing Portsmouth to sort of play a different type of game when negotiating it. But I did see that figure. I thought he's been very good since he came in January. I mean, he's got a world against Oxford in the second time we played you. Corker will go. And he looked like a very very. He looked like a very, very good. Looked like a very, very good guy, a very, very good player. And being a centre back as well, I didn't expect him to hit that goal. But you can clearly see he's a very talented player. But £500,000. I mean, for League One. I mean, I know that the prices are slightly, increasing. It's a strange figure.
It is. It's he's much better than £500,000. Let's be honest. He's a Championship player, and I think it's almost a bit of an insult to him, to be honest, to put £500,000 on his name. You talk about Marcus Harness has also been potentially linked with a move with Swansea City. I know that one's gone a little bit quiet over the last couple of weeks, but that is likely to be in the region of £2.5-3 million.
Do you know how long he's got left in his contract? Carter.
It's a 12-month extension. Carter.
Because that'll obviously affect. Obviously, that'll affect the transfer fee a little bit on that.
Yeah.
Because if let's say he's got 2 years left in his contract, £500,000. It's still
doesn't add up, does it?
It's bizarre. But if he's got 3 years, it should be even more. Maybe got a year left. You can sort of take it with a pinch of salt. But I don't know. It's a bizarre one.
It is weird. Anyway, let's move on because we can't talk about upset me with the 500.
Yeah, we can't be. We're not negotiating.
I don't want to, Jack. I don't want to.
We don't worry about it too much. I think that's a really good place to sort of round up on Portsmouth. I do want to sort of give you. I do want to do team of the season. I want to talk about the team of the season. I've done my team of the season episode.
Where would you put us, Jack? Next year for Pompey.
top six. The problem we've got in the same sort of boat is Derby's window season comes down to their window and comes down to a potential takeover. So that's completely, that's up in the air. Peterborough, they're definitely be fighting. Barnsley coming down, they're going to want to be, of course, going straight back up. But like you said, like we just mentioned there, you've got Ipswich, you've got Charlton. What are they going to be doing in terms of their manager? What's the situation going to be there? I think I worked it out. I think you probably got at least 10 teams, 11 teams wanting to finish in the top six. So there's going to be at least 4 or 5 teams that you feel, right now should be at the top six. Well, not necessarily on paper, but you feel definitely could be and feel that they should be. But it won't happen. And that's just the level of League One, the competitivity of League One, the size of the clubs in League One with the expectations alongside it. That's sort of the trouble. But I do think you're going to finish in the top six. I'm not just saying it because you're here. And as well, I've always said it before, I don't really know if Oxford will be unless we have a really, really good summer window because it feels like it gets harder every single year. So I think Oxford, I got my prediction spot on. I got it. I think I predicted 8th, which is in the end where we finished. But yeah, I don't know going into next year. You have to wait on the summer, similar to Portsmouth. Really, it's so hard to predict now. But I do think you'll be finishing the top 6. And one thing I would say, quickly moving on, we'll talk about before we move on. Yep. I think Oxford and Portsmouth maybe a little bit. At least we haven't got to worry about a manager going into it because we've got Charlton. They're still looking for a manager. They haven't appointed anyone yet. I mean, that's something to look at. I know you're looking at a director of football, so at least there's a bit of stability going into the window and going into next season, and something to build on. So I guess that's a positive we can take. But you've still got Ipswich that are fine. Obviously, Wayne Rooney, I presume, is going to be staying at Derby, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But yeah, I think that was a really sort of nice segment on Port. So Tom, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been an amazing chat. We've discussed everything, really. If you enjoyed it, let me know in the comments down below. I'm sure Tom will come on, hopefully, if he's willing to, come on maybe at the start of next season as well, discussing going into next year. And yeah, really, really exciting times. Thank you so much, Tom.
You're welcome, mate. Thanks for watching, everybody. Subscribe down below. Perfect. We want the Young Fan podcast to be taken over League One football next season. So get that done. Mate. And hopefully be on the channel very soon, mate. Make sure you subscribe to 4-0 written all over it. And I'll see you all very, very soon. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.